Ajahn Santamano is going to talk about ethics and the world is the topic. And so this is the first part, and the second part will be on the 6th of March. Because next week we have the Q&A on Wednesday night, so we're skipping next week. So unless you've been hiding in a cave for the last 4 or 5 months, you've probably, at least even if you don't look at the internet, picked up quite a lot of the news that's going around in the world. And it's of course Palestine, but also like Sudan, Yemen, Myanmar, just to name a few, where there's, and Ukraine of course is still ongoing, where there's a lot of chaos in the world, a lot of suffering in the world. And so Ajahn will be talking about like what would we, as a Buddhist, what is our like ethical response? Ethical response can we have to these developments in the world? And also like what does it mean to be human? What does it actually mean to be alive? And what is internal? What is external? Like what's internal inside of us? What's this external world? And how does that work together? And how do we actually ourselves participate in systems that might be causing harm in the world? And looking inside ourselves and see how what is going on there. So Ajahn Santamano ordained in Amaravati in 2008 as Anagarika, and in 2011 as the full ordination as Bhikkhu Sampada, and has been the last, when did you start, since May or so? Yeah, not yet a year, of an independent wandering monk, and who wants to also openly speak about Bhikkhuni ordination. And as you probably know, that in Amaravati that is not really something that's on the agenda. So, and also about gender equality and things like that, and to highlight prejudices on in our societies that based on like class, race, caste, and also sexuality and gender and things like that. So, very welcome, Ajahn Santamano. And I give the word to you, and we'll switch over to the other microphone.
So welcome everyone. I was reflecting of what or how to present my reflections, and I felt probably like a formal Dhamma talk might not be the best medium. And so usually when we do formal Dhamma talks, we do like Namo Tassa, and then but this time I think and also because I don't really know where the audience or what opinions the audience has, so I just wanted to present general my own reflections on the situation, especially if one looks around at the world, so many atrocities that are happening, and especially the worst, in the worst case, the ongoing genocide happening in Palestine. So I would, just maybe I thought to offer some poetry readings of poets who have spoken about Palestine over the years. One poet from the United States, and probably two Palestinian poets, and then see if there's any reflections, contemplations, Dhamma reflections that come to mind. So to start off with, again, I don't know how much people know about what has been happening in Palestine, but since more than 4 months, sort of indiscriminate bombing all of Gaza, almost all of Gaza has been destroyed, including hospitals, schools. I believe all the universities have been destroyed, residential areas, and at present, a population of 1.5 million people is concentrated in Rafah near the border with Egypt, and that is also planned. There's a plan to attack that as well, with around 30,000 people having been killed. Large percentage of them women and children. Hospitals systematically attacked and destroyed. So the scale of the brutality is one wouldn't have thought that such brutality would be allowed to continue. And yet the Western countries, especially United States, not only actively support but provide financial aid, weapons aid, and diplomatic cover. Just recently, I believe the UN Security Council again voted on a ceasefire proposal, and yet again the United States used its veto power to prevent that proposal going through. So maybe to start off with, I have a quote, just read out a quote by Edward Said. So yeah, in Palestine, since the state of Israel was founded in 1948, there has, and people were, large sections of the Palestinian population were expelled, and also later in 1967. And I believe there's around 4.5 million Palestinian refugees. So people, and so this is a quote from Edward Said. He was a great Palestinian American scholar. He wrote the famous book Orientalism in, I believe, 1978, reflecting on the representations of people who are colonized by the colonizer, and the dehumanization that is often such an integral part of the colonial project. So this one is from a book called Reflections on Exile and Other Essays. And it's a quote about his reflecting on his own exile in the United States. He himself was a professor of comparative literature, French and English literature, but also from Palestine. So he would often talk quite eloquently about the situation there. So exile is strangely compelling to think about, but terrible to experience. It is an unhealable rift forced between a human being and a native place, between the self and its true home. Its essential sadness can never be surmounted, and yet, while it is true that literature and history contain heroic, romantic, glorious, even triumphant episodes in an exile's life, there are no more, these are no more than efforts meant to overcome the crippling sorrow of estrangement. So this again reflecting on the experience of not only the people in Gaza at the present time suffering all these, and also the West Bank, there's also violence there. So suffering these atrocities, but also the people looking on from outside. And then the next, there's a poem, few poems by I would like to read from June Jordan. She was a black poet writing in the 1980s, 1990s. This is a poem she wrote just after the Israeli invasion and occupation of Lebanon, where similar tactics were used of sort of mass bombing of civilian areas, and many of the Palestinian refugees were in Lebanon at the time. So this one is called Apologies to All the People of Lebanon by June Jordan, dedicated to the 600,000 Palestinian men, women and children who lived in Lebanon from 1948 to 1983. I didn't know, and nobody told me. What could I do or say anyway? They said, you shot the London ambassador. And when that wasn't true, they said so. What they said, you shelled, they said you shelled the northern villages. And when UN forces reported that was not true, because your side of the ceasefire was holding since more than a year before they said so. What what they said, they wanted simply to carve a 25-mile border zone, and then they ravage your water supplies, your electricity, your hospitals, your schools, your highways and byways, all the way to North Beirut. Because they said this was their quest for peace, they blew up your homes and demolished the grocery stores and blocked the Red Cross and took away doctors to jail, and they cluster bombed girls and boys whose bodies swelled purple and black into twice the original size and tore the buttocks from the 4-month-old baby. Then they said this was brilliant military accomplishment, and this was done, they said, in the name of self-defense. They said, they said, this is the noblest concept of mankind, isn't that obvious? They said something about never again. Then they made close to 1 million human beings homeless in less than 3 weeks, and they killed or maimed 40,000 of your men and your women and your children. But I didn't know, and nobody told me. What could I do or say anyway? They said they were victims. They said you were Arabs. They called your apartments and garden guerrilla strongholds. They called the screaming devastation that they created the rubble. Then they told you to leave, didn't they? Didn't you read the leaflets they dropped from their hotshot fighter jets? They told you to go. 150,000 Palestinians in Beirut. And why didn't you take the hint? Go. There was the Mediterranean. You could walk into the water and stay there. What was the problem? I didn't know, and nobody told me. And what could I do or say anyway? Yes, I did know. It was the money I earned as a poet that paid for the bombs and the planes and the tanks that they used to massacre your family. But I am not an evil person. The people of my country aren't so bad. You can expect but so much from those of us who have to pay taxes and watch American TV. You see my point. I am sorry. I really am sorry. That was about 1982, and now in 2024, so much of the same things are happening. And how many of us are silent? How many of us know what is happening? How many of us reflect? Is there anything we can do to stop this genocide? So this next poem again by June Jordan. And recently I heard this poem read again in a presentation by the Dhamma teacher and filmmaker Aishah Shahidah Simmons. This is called Moving Towards Home by June Jordan. Where is Abu Fadi? He wailed, who will bring back my loved one? This was from an article in the New York Times, 20th September 1982. I do not wish to speak about the bulldozer and the red dirt, not quite covering all of the arms and legs. Nor do I wish to speak about the night-long screams that reached the observation posts where soldiers lounged about. Nor do I wish to speak about the woman who shoved her baby into the stranger's hands before she led away. Nor do I wish to speak about the father whose sons were shot through the head while they slit his own throat before the eyes of his wife. Nor do I wish to speak about the army that lit continuous flares into the darkness so that the others could see the backs of their victims lined against the wall. Nor do I wish to speak about the piled up bodies and the stench that will not float, nor do I wish to speak about the nurse, again and again, raped before they murdered her on the hospital floor. Nor do I wish to speak about the rattling bullets that did not halt on that kneeling trajectory. Nor do I wish to speak about the pounding on the doors, the breaking of windows, and the hauling of families into the world of the dead. I do not wish to speak about the bulldozer and the red dirt not quite covering all the arms and legs, because I do not wish to speak about unspeakable events that must follow from those who dare to purify a people, those who dare to exterminate a people, those who dare to describe human beings as beasts with two legs, those who dare to mop up, to tighten the noose, to step up the military pressure, to ring around civilian streets with tanks, those who dare to close the universities, to abolish the press, to kill the elected representatives of the people who refuse to be purified. Those are the ones from whom we must redeem the words of our beginning, because I need to speak about home. I need to speak about living room, where the land is not bullied and beaten to a tombstone. I need to speak about living room, where the talk will take place in my language. I need to speak about living room where my children will grow without horror. I need to speak about living room where men of my family between the ages of 6 and 65 are not marched into a roundup that leads to the grave. I need to talk about living room where I can sit without grief, without wailing aloud for my loved ones, where I must not ask where Abu Fadi because he will be there beside me. I need to talk about living room because I need to talk about home. I was born a black woman, and now I am become a Palestinian. Against the relentless laughter of evil, there is less and less living room, and where are my loved ones? It is time to make our way home. So just then pointing to the various, the shared nature of various struggles, and if we reflect, what is it? How is it that we approach these events? How is it we think about these events? And then maybe we do not do anything, but that's at least for us to reflect and consider how should we approach or relate to these events. And then I chose mainly to focus on these poetry readings because I feel with poetry or art, there's a way, we can read all sorts of news reports or reports from human rights organizations like Al-Haq or Adamir or prisoner conditions. And yet, with poetry, it has a way to highlight the actual human condition or the human problem that we face or that the world faces. And then that allows us to reflect on what is an ethical choice for us to make. Do we condemn all Palestinians as terrorists and therefore justify genocide against them? Or do we reflect on the historical conditions that bring about resistance to colonization? So then the next poem is, I'd maybe like to play a video. So this is by a Palestinian poet, Rafif Ziada, and this was many of her poems are written. The assaults on Gaza, every few years there have been bombing campaigns. So this has been far worse than anything previously. But so this is one of the poems she wrote after, I believe, this was the assault on Gaza in 2014, and that was the worst one. I believe that lasted 52 days, the worst one up till then.
Military aggression on Gaza in 2014. And it kills me now that I have to number my poems by the assaults on Gaza. And what kills me even more is that people tend to remember us and remember Palestine only when there is a mass slaughter that's being televised going on. But throughout the other time, when the home demolitions are ongoing and the apartheid wall stops us from getting to our farms, and Palestinian citizens of Israel are treated as third-class citizens, everyone acts as if it's normal times. And it now takes thousands of deaths for people to get angry. I hope that there can be action, serious action and solidarity before the next round of thousands being massacred on TV screens. If my words can stop this, if my words can stop this, if they could stand in the way of a bomb, a drone, or a single bullet, if my words can stop this, if they could stand in the way of a bomb, a drone, or a single bullet, I would lay them at the feet of every child in Gaza and offer them like prayer. I would recite them over and over and over until all language breaks. I would write them endlessly. I would write them endlessly until all language breaks like daylight. As we count our dead, they ask me for balance. They still ask me for balance. And he used to balance his son on his knees and sing, and now he's lost his legs and his son. How can I balance your silence against all the sound of artillery in Gaza? How can I balance your silence against neighborhoods wiped out into smoke? How can I balance between David and Goliath? How do I balance between David and Goliath? You tell me. But we're holding our ground. We're still smiling. We're still smiling in Gaza, and we are holding our ground. We are holding our ground. If my words could stop this, I would scream back this gasoline taste in my throat for 4 weeks now. I would write my spine disfigured like maps of Palestine and stand tall at the top of my lungs, scream, make them stop, make them stop, make them stop, please someone make them stop. They're just children playing. Is the beach forbidden? Is there any place safe left under your sky? Made of iron, dome. But we're still smiling here. and we are holding our ground. We are holding our ground. And if my words could stop this, I would argue circles around every Israeli spokesperson. I would tell them, let's be clear, your smooth accents can't make killing children justified. Let's be clear, we are not collateral, don't you dare call us collateral. Let's be clear, your polished talking points stick inside skin, near bone like shrapnel. I shake my head to shake them off. But we are still standing here. We are still standing here. We are holding our ground. We are holding our ground. And if my words could stop this, I would hold them up like fists pounding, like hearts pounding in shelters. They asked us to evacuate, and then they bombed us. And he pressed her little head into his chest. She's alive, she's alive, she's alive, she's alive. I swear she's still alive. And they had to pry her little body out of his hands. And if I could, I would offer me his daughter. If I could, I would offer him the words of the world. But this is no time for poetry, my friend. The sky is raining, heavy steel everywhere. This is no time for poetry. There's no space for bodies in hospitals anymore. There's no water, there's no electricity. And in this darkness, I wish my words can transform to light, to protection. And I wish for some quiet. I wish for some quiet. I wish for some quiet from those who battle to get to the microphones and perform their rituals. All you clamoring to get on stages to speak your rage, spare us. Get out of the limelight. Let Gaza speak, let Rafah speak, let Jenin speak, let Jerusalem speak, let Shatila speak, let Deir Yassin speak, let everybody lying on the streets of Gaza speak for itself today. I will not mourn my dead in 140 characters for your Twitter. My dead are not your bloody Facebook status. My dead are not there to be cluttered into an infographic that you share today and then forget. But we are holding our ground. We are holding our ground. And if my words could stop this, I would create a rhythm louder than this beat too familiar. I would learn the lyrics to every freedom song and write it on every building still standing in Gaza. If my words could stop this, if they could stand in the way of a bomb, a drone, or a single bullet, I would lay them at the feet. I would lay them at the feet of every child in Gaza and offer them like prayer. Recite them over and over and over like the holy names of God. I would write them endlessly until all language breaks. Until all language breaks. Until all language breaks. But all I can offer you, my friend, is this silence and a poem, and tell you not to worry. We're still holding our ground. We're still holding our ground. We're still holding our ground.
Okay, so yeah, that was Rafif Ziada, and so then I think the last, I believe this is the last poem I'll read. So on 6th of December, the Israeli military deliberately assassinated the Palestinian poet, scholar and teacher, Dr. Refat Al-Arir, along with many members of his family. The flat where he was staying was bombed, and then so this is a tribute. I'll read one of his poems, but before that, so this is a tribute from the Electronic Intifada. That's a publication that has brought news about Palestine for many years. And they interviewed him many times on their live streams. They have these live streams ongoing throughout these 4 months. We are devastated by Israel's murder of our dear colleague and friend, mentor, Dr. Refat Al-Arir in Gaza City on 6 December 2023. Throughout this genocide, Refat never stopped writing, supporting his students and bringing Gaza's voice to the world. We will make sure it continues to be heard. And I believe after the 2014 assault on Gaza, he founded this organization called We Are Not Numbers, because on the news one can see, I mean, Rafif Ziad was talking about thousands, but now it's tens of thousands, so 10,000, 20,000, 8,000 children, 10,000 children, etc. And then these people just become numbers who are victims. And so he would encourage, Refat al-Aria would encourage his students to write about their lives, to write stories about their lives, about their aspirations, write poetry. And he also taught literature. Many of his lectures, etc., are freely available on YouTube. I would encourage you to watch them. And so he formed this organization to sort of humanize Palestinians, especially people in Gaza. And this is one of his poems that has often at Palestine protests. The people often bring a white kite, and it's a reference to this particular poem. So this is If I Must Die by Refat Alaria, 1979 to 2023. If I must die, you must live to tell my story, to sell my things, to buy a piece of cloth and some strings. Make it white with a long tail, so that a child somewhere in Gaza, while looking heaven in the eye, awaiting his dead who left in a blaze, and bid no one farewell, not even his flesh, not even to himself, sees the kite, my kite, you made, flying up above, and thinks for a moment, an angel there, bringing back love. If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. So these four characters that appear in this poem, the imagined boy whose father has been killed, and the person buying the material to make the kite and flying that over the skies of Gaza. And then the young boy sees the kite and imagines it to be an angel who's bringing that message. So yeah, I suppose I offered these poems, and maybe just to end some brief, more general reflections of when we say we are spiritual practitioners. Surely, at least for myself, ethical conduct is a fundamental part of that spiritual practice. And then if we reflect on the type of world we are living in and the various systems and structures that cause harm, and then just by existing, we are automatically part of so many of these systems and structures. Bell Hooks, the great feminist scholar and activist, she would start off her talks listing out the various systems of oppression that many of the societies we live in operate under. So, like white supremacy, white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist, heteropatriarchal societies, and these various systems, both on a material level, but also ways of thinking that we might have unconsciously adopted in the way we look at the world, the way we interpret what we hear in the news. So unless we examine those ways of thinking in ourselves, then we might be contributing to causing harm to various groups of people. And often these systems and structures operate by invisibilizing these systems of harm. We can especially if we are advantaged by a particular way of thinking. For example, patriarchy. If I myself am experiencing advantages from patriarchy, then I can pretend that I am for gender equality and yet be contributing in ways of how I act, how I speak, to reproducing those systems, or people affected by one particular system of oppression might have internalized those ways of thinking, like racism or homophobia, transphobia, patriarchy, etc. And so I feel it's a fundamental component of spiritual practice for us to reflect on these things. So when we talk about sila or ethics and morality on a sort of gross level, as just choosing not to do harm by action in body, speech, and mind, but then as we practice more, as we reflect more, and perhaps we can extend how we look at sila, and consider how our actions, how our ways of thinking might affect the world we live in, and then at least on a minimal level, at least moving towards minimizing the harm that we might cause. And I don't believe it is possible to be completely pure, to be completely not complicit in these systems, because just by existing one is automatically causing harm to various beings. But at least to bring that reflective and critical quality in the way we think about the world we live in, and then how we are in the world. So yeah, this is some reflections we wanted to offer today, and I hope I say I only offer this for reflection. These are just my own views or reflections, and as they say after talks, if anything has resonated or you felt moved by anything, please feel free to take it away and make use of it. But if something hasn't resonated or you strongly disagree with my points of view, please feel free to leave them aside. I offer that for reflection.
Yes. Ajahn, thank you for this reflection and very appreciate that. So sometimes we have a biased viewpoint. Anyway, we are not enlightened. So when we see this biased viewpoint, how we can be balanced and think as a human being about this incidents and whole story without biasing. Is my question. Any guidance?
Yeah, I mean, So the question was the reflecting on the bias that inevitably exists with each of us, and yeah, I don't think I can offer any sort of concrete answer except for us to study and to look at as many viewpoints as possible, to attempt to uh, study, look at different sources, and then attempt to make one's own mind up. So that I suppose that's the, and then inevitably recognizing that we can we are not always right, but to attempt to maintain one's integrity with what one feels to be right, and then taking both the approach of honesty with oneself and then a constant um, cultivating a critical attitude to what one hears, and then so yeah, those are few things that come to mind. So any questions from the Zoom? Yeah, Rita, I will.
Can you put the names of the poets in the chat, please?
Yeah, I can. I'll put the names of the poets. I have to juggle.
What we can do, Rita and everyone else as well, is that we're making a little video here. Aishah here is making a lovely array of film, and so we're going to make a YouTube video, and so that will appear on YouTube in the next few days, and then we can put all the names in there as well, and I will let you know where it is.
Okay.
And I think Helen's got her hand up.
It's
like digital hand.
Okay. You should be able to unmute. Yeah.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Isn't it very difficult today for Buddhists to have a very balanced view of what we see going on? It's very easy to take sides in all the atrocities we're seeing in the world. It's not only in Palestine and Gaza, but in Ukraine, Russia, Myanmar, and all these countries. And how do we avoid taking sides? I think that's a very difficult thing, because the situations to many of us maybe are very clear, but at the same time we need also to look at the other side. Is there any thoughts around how we can work with that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, again, I feel probably it's each individual has to decide for themselves, and it's like, in a sense, what is an ethical position to take in any particular situation, depending on what one has learned about the history or the particular events that might be happening. So then it becomes less about taking a particular side, but if one approaches, say, from an anti-war perspective, or moving what what are ways of speaking, ways of presenting or understanding a particular situation that leads to an ending of a conflict. But yeah, I mean, I cannot really offer any. Again, I just offer these as reflections, and I don't think particularly profound, but each person has to reflect for themselves and then choose what uh, position to take. Again, not in terms of taking sides, but looking at what is the nature of the injustice in any particular situation. In some cases, there might be a balance, of like a both sides narrative, or in some cases there may be a large power imbalance that there's uh, atrocities being committed on a far larger scale by one particular side. But I feel it's more important to focus on the historical conditions and approaching from a sort of anti-war perspective, or like I mean, this case, stopping the genocide, even if one can maybe attempt to cultivate compassion for those committing atrocities. I feel it's more important to sort of stop the atrocities, or put one's effort or energy more into. So again, these are few things that come to mind.
Yes, I can add something to that. I don't know if you.
Microphone.
Is that
Yeah.
microphone? Okay. Way to Portugal. Okay. Something that Ajahn Brahm always stresses is it's like, don't judge the person, judge the actions, judge the acts. So whoever does an act of violence, you can judge that act, but that person behind it is a very complex system that has been conditioned in certain ways. And I think we can all see how this whole situation has also actually direct roots in the Second World War. And that had direct roots in way before that. So it's a very complex history on that side. That is not to say that it's right. It's absolutely wrong to perpetuate violence, but it comes basically from delusion in from some and you can see how far delusion goes in such situations is that they can absolutely not see that what they're doing is wrong. They really believe this is self-defense. It's not that that this is really completely malicious intent. It is really the intent is really they believe it's self-defense and they can't talk that out of their heads because they're completely so deluded that they can't see the reality of what is really happening and step away from that. And so it's yeah, to judge the actions and try and stop that in whatever way, if there's any way that we can. Well, that's very difficult because it's very easy to feel very helpless in a situation like this. It's like there's nothing I can do, kind of thing. But maybe there is in some way supporting groups of people that are outside of this war zone. And even calling it a war, you can't really call it a war anymore. It's not like equal sides fighting, but like the groups that are affected, like Jewish groups as well as Palestinian groups outside of this conflict in Europe, in America, that are signing petitions. What they're doing in the US is a whole group. They are calling senators. They just spent like days just calling senators. In the UK as well, I believe there's some people doing that. All these kind of things is something you can do. It's like you have to be in a situation where that is a possibility. Like for me, I can't go and call American senators, so it's not going to really work. But yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can try and do in any case. Is there any more questions there or people?
Just one.
Yeah,
no,
two here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm interested in what other Buddhist responses. I think of Thich Nhat Hanh, for instance, and the Vietnam War, and the difficulty of speaking out about issues and at the same time trying to be neutral, but having an active response. I'm wondering what other Buddhist responses you can bring this present situation.
Oh, yeah, unfortunately, many Dhamma centers, especially in the West, have been mostly silent. And there's in the United States, there's a Sacred Mountain Sangha. That's a group by Thanisara and Kittisaro. They've been also previously quite active in that engaged Buddhism of raising awareness about the climate crisis, etc. And they've been having like a chanting group. They meet every day chanting for ceasefire. There's other small pockets of individual practitioners who are attempting to speak. And yeah, I think at least for myself, all I see is maybe to speak in a way that raises awareness, or maybe people who might not have thought about these things, or of course, it's probably not really possible to reach people who might have very fixed views already, but maybe people who might be sort of open to listening to a different point of view, maybe speaking in ways that maybe they might be able to hear, and so yeah.
I do want to come back to what you said about Thich Nhat Hanh as well, because like it's quite well known. It was the Vietnam War. Thich Nhat Hanh was also was not just a meditation teacher; he was also an activist. And with him, also a whole group actually of monastics were activists, and that's why he was also given a Nobel Peace Prize. It was not because he was sitting on his meditation cushion all the time, but yeah, I find him very, very inspiring also to read how he also had to work within himself as a Buddhist to find that strength to speak up, to find the strength to actually do certain things, to create this awareness in the West, because that's mostly what he's been doing. But also various initiatives that he did within Vietnam to help people directly at the cost of nearly his own life when a hand grenade was thrown in his bedroom. Well, he luckily was out for that night, but yeah, so there are quite often also ways to do that while not having hatred towards the other people, and that you actually have far more power. And like one person, like Thich Nhat Hanh, showed that. It's how much power you can have that within yourself. You can have this non-hatred approach. And he often also forgave the people that, and he taught that as well. So he forgave the people that were harming his own associates, who actually murdered his own associates. Yeah, I think in the long run, that gives a very, very powerful message.
So I just want to share some comments which I heard from the Buddha actually, like what Buddha get like I'm also coming from some country which happened there was a civil war. So I am very familiar about bombing because some bombing happened near to my school also at the time. So in one incident that Buddha, Vidudaba, King Vidudaba, he going to genocide all the Shakyans, and Buddha tried to 3 times stop it. And the last time he went, he set down the some dry tree and stay in front of the Vidudaba, and Vidudaba asked, "Why you sat on the down of the dry tree?" And he said, "Okay, because without my relatives, like this place, this dry. So I think for us, everyone is a relate. We have relations with everyone. So I think we choose innocent, but yes, we shouldn't be biased." And the second example is that Buddha went middle of the river of the shark and Kolia, and he asked, what is the importance of what is the water or human life? So again, land or human life. We have to think about that. That's my point.
Okay.
Fortunately, that example after the Buddha passed away, that didn't last very long, that piece. But yes, people forget very quickly sometimes.
Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivade Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangha